Walking by. Yes. All right. There we go. Yep, we're recording. So, call a session the Transportation Mobility Board meeting for September 25th, 6:30. We will first of all start with a verbal attendance. Well, actually, I guess we'll start with who's on the Zoom and then work our way around the room, please.
All right. I'm seeing Derek and Matt. You guys confirm your.
Yep.
Here.
My name is Derek Mills. I'm the co-chair of the TMB board.
And I'm Matt. I'm a member. I'm here.
Josh Stewart, I'm present.
Jeff Selzer, chair, present.
Dave Evans, member.
Michael Glodden, present.
There we go. All right, thank you. So we'll start off with public comment. Looks like we have a few people who are here to speak to us.
Yeah.
I'll let you guys fight out who goes first.
I'll go first.
You can come up, grab a chair. Yeah.
Hi.
Your name.
Okay.
Need help? That's perfect.
Thank you. All right. I'm Connie Cantrell. I live at the Bradley House. I'm in District 2. Last month you talked about equity, and I really want to say thank you for the city of Littleton to actually go down this path. The definition of equity is fairness and justice that recognizes different needs among people, and provides needed support to ensure everyone has an equal opportunity to succeed. In South Metro housing, and this is where I really try to push this shuttle bus. You have low-income people, you have people on disability. And in the South Metro housing properties, there are 500 apartments. Assuming half of our seniors, 99% of the seniors living in these residences have served, worked, and paid taxes in the Littleton and Denver metro area. Kmart managers, mechanics, secretaries, assistants, LPNs, hospital and grocery store staff. Many of the women are mothers, grandmothers who devoted their lives to their families, and our Social Security reflects that. The shuttle bus will serve Littleton residents who do not have cars, don't have the money for lifts, and the ability to use technology to make reservations. We are your parents, your aunts, your uncles, your grandparents, your great-grandparents, who are trying to live a full life. Getting to the store is key to staying independent. Please make sure the shuttle bus happens. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, so I saw your handout here, and I'm going to talk about something different today, but everything she said about the shuttle bus, I also.
So you state your name and
My name is Barbara Wisniewski. I think I forgot last time too. You guys make me so nervous. My name is Barbara Wisniewski, and I live in the Allison Court Apartments on Gallup. Okay, so I'm gonna talk about sidewalks. From this picture. Okay, so I have a pet peeve about sidewalks, and I was just asking if there's like a publication we could put something in. But one of my pet peeves, it's actually the wrong time of year to bring it up so much because we're going into winter. But you know, I walk my dog everywhere, and I also walk with a small shopping cart from Allison Court all the way to Broadway to King Soopers. And when I'm pushing it back, it's kind of heavy and it's hard to get off the sidewalks. And for some reason, people think it's pretty to put big sunflower plants or other kinds of flowers where they lean over the sidewalk like this and drop bees, see? So I would like to think of a way that we can discourage that behavior and just, you know, keep the sidewalks clear from vegetation, especially if it draws bees. And the other thing too is it's coming up on snow removal time, okay? So I'd like to know, like when somebody lives in a corner house, in the front of their house is right here, it's always nicely shoveled, but somehow they always forget the part that's on the side. So is there anything you can do to remind people that they need to shovel the side if they live in the side of that corner house? Is that correct, or just?
It's often the north side that doesn't get any sun.
Yes.
This is melt.
Yeah, so
Okay,
that's a problem.
I don't know what you're talking about.
Okay.
Weigh it.
So then just miscellaneous things too, as far as the what's what I want, the condition of the sidewalks. Okay, so on the way to King Supers down Shepherd, from the back, there's the sidewalk in the back of where the loading dock is for King Supers, that whole area. It's totally terrible sidewalks. They're just like, it's really hard to push my shopping cart up and down around that area. So that might be an area you can just look at for repair. Okay, I guess that's about it. And they're all too narrow.
So I'm gonna address this real quick, just to throw out. Are you familiar with the C-Click Fix application?
No,
Do you have a smartphone?
yes.
So the C-Click Fix, if you install the application, there, and I don't know if city staff will like that I'm saying this or not, but what you can do is you go, everything you addressed other than bees, because bees are not against code. But all the other stuff are code violations. And so you can report them to the city. You take a picture of it, you put in the address, you put in a little blurb about what you're seeing or what the issue is, and then they will assign it to somebody and address it if it's against
But
code.
it still shouldn't, if you have vegetation of any kind, whether or not it draws bees, it shouldn't block the
That is
sidewalk,
correct.
right? That's correct.
It's just the bees that are not against code.
Right.
Everything else you said was
Well,
against
that
code.
just makes it, and I think about the poor, people walking with babies in their strollers.
100% agree.
Makes me sad.
Everything you talked about, vegetation in the sidewalk, crumbling sidewalks, not shoveling, more than, I think it's 24 hours, I believe is what we have to shovel our sidewalks.
Make a report.
Make a report and somebody from city staff will go take a look at and try to resolve it.
Because that was C as in Charlie, click fix? Is that what?
C is in, like, I see you,
Oh, C,
I see you,
C.
I click it on my phone, and then Shane goes and fixes it personally.
Okay, well, thank you very much for your time.
Is that appropriate? Is that appropriate?
Absolutely. And just so you know, Kelly has joined, so I don't know, Kelly, if you want to say hi or anything, but.
Thank you. Yeah. Hello.
All right, Robin,
Okay,
last but certainly not least.
hi there, I'm Robin Bernstein. I live at Littleton Crossing. All the cars still need to slow down. And I wanted to comment on Pat Driscoll's sidewalk comment in the Littleton Independent. He wants all bikes to use the sidewalk. Does Pat realize how dangerous a speeding e-bike would be on the sidewalk with pedestrians and children? It's too dangerous and there's no room for them. I suggest Pat or any other curious citizen to get your 10-speed or e-bike out, ride or walk up Main Street, cross over to Bega Park, and then walk or ride up Littleton Boulevard. Then you will experience the raging, speeding cell phone drivers, the crumbling, dilapidated sidewalks, and if there is a sidewalk, you can experience how to dodge cars and how to escape death by distracted, unaware, angry cell phone drivers. If Pat did this, he would not make assumptions. Pat needs to get his cop friends to ticket all these speeding vehicles, then a class on safety, awareness, and road rage. If everyone would walk or take the bus or light rail once a week, it would alleviate the attachment to the car, alleviate their attachment, and also it would promote health, awareness, and vitality. Thank you.
Robin, you need to look at today's Denver Post and the editorials page. You'll find the cartoon hilarious and to your point.
Thank you.
Thanks.
All right, on to the business and the agenda. So we're gonna walk through a few things. We're gonna do a little recap and update on the Lottie Street study. I know several of us were there doing that walkthrough a couple weeks ago. Talk about Broadway, Littleton, address our field trip. And hopefully we can get through all
The
that.
agenda, yeah.
Thank you. There you go. All right, so starting off with the Lottie Street,
Yeah, I'll start. So, you guys, I think, are pretty familiar with the Lottie Street and the Lottie Street corridor study. So, as part of our presentation tonight, Shada Liphart is here from HDR, who's the prime consultant on the project, and she'll be presenting and kind of give you guys an overview, and I'll answer any questions you guys have. So with that, I'll turn it over to Shada.
Thank you, Shane. I'm gonna fumble my way to share my screen. 6 years of this, and I'm still not exactly sure how to do everything. Get it into presentation mode. That's the trick.
Now comes that top bar. Well, like click and drag.
I'm just gonna, if this works for you all, I'm gonna move that to the side.
It's fine.
Okay. Is it okay if I stay here? Or would you rather me go? So first, thank you so much for having us tonight. I'm excited to give you all an update. We're going to go through some of the facts and findings from the existing conditions analysis, and I'm going to highlight our case for action, and we'll talk about the options that we've developed and also what's next for the project. And we're happy to have discussion, answer any questions. And I'm assuming y'all are okay just interrupting me as I'm going through.
We will interrupt.
I'm okay with
Candidly, even if you're not okay, perhaps.
I'm okay with that. So just a quick highlight of kind of the demographics in the community on Elati Street. For this type of a corridor, Elati Street is not necessarily, the typical corridor in a neighborhood that you might think. And it varies widely. I think that's a common theme throughout all of the existing conditions, is that it varies depending on where you are in the corridor. One of the things that struck our team as really interesting is the fact that as you get north and closer to Littleton Boulevard, we see more households that are renting, and also a greater percentage of households that do not own a vehicle. And then if we expand that to, a low vehicle availability, maybe there's one vehicle per household, but 4 or 5 people that live there, that percentage continues to increase. And so what that really tells us is that there's a higher propensity, maybe on the north side than on the south, but still a propensity consistently throughout the corridor that using a way to get around other than a vehicle is a necessity. And it's also something that would be useful for the community, even for those that maybe do have some access to a vehicle. The other thing that I think is really interesting about the corridor, on the top, there's a chart that shows the ages for the city of Littleton, kind of broken down by group, but also for our study area. And this really shows that there are a lot of students and young children, but there are also a lot of older adults. And as we think about the Elati Street corridor today, as people get older, maintaining their mobility independence is incredibly important. And one of the key ways to do that is walking and biking, being able to access the transit that's on Broadway and Littleton Boulevard. And also for young people who don't have driver's license yet. But not only today, as we think about the next 10, 15, 20 years, a lot of those people may be staying in their homes, continuing to age in place. And so we're going to see that percentage, or we might see that percentage of people who are older continuing to go up. And so those needs for mobility options is expected to just continue to increase. I think the other thing that I'll highlight here, it is a bullet, but it's really important. We used cell phone data, so big data that collects data from everyone's cell phones to tell us kind of all the trips that are being taken, how far are they? And we looked at a few other components too, but what was really interesting is that 54% of all of the trips that are typically taken from people starting in the corridor are under 4 miles in length. And we kind of use 3, 4, maybe up to 5 miles as what we call short trips. And those short trips have the greatest ability to be converted from vehicle use to things like walking, biking, and also accessing transit.
Yeah, and one thing I'll add, and I probably should have done a better job of introing. So I think everybody knows we're in phase 2 of public engagement right now, but we had our first phase of public engagement back in May and June, and we just kicked off the second phase of public engagement informally with the walk audit that I think a few of you were at, but then more formally with the online meeting that launched last week. So, and this is all from our existing conditions report, which can be found on the project page too. So sorry for not setting that context, but go ahead.
So I'm sorry, before we move on, the 54 to 59%, those are from trips started on the corridor. Did you happen to also look at what percentage of trips that involve the corridor at all? Like, in other words, somebody started 5 miles away and driving to the friend's house, or somebody was started, I don't live on there, but I drove through there to go over supers or something like that.
So I do not believe that we have that number. I think the way that it was pulled is the origin was within a certain distance of the corridor.
Do you know what percentage of traffic on that road is the people who live on that road?
We do not.
Feels like that would be, because I think about like trying to build that corridor out, understanding some of that might be helpful.
It would be helpful. I'm not sure how to get that data.
Okay.
If we could have every piece of data we wanted, that would be great. And I will just say that 59% of commute trips that are under 10 miles, that comes from the Census Bureau. So that's a different.
Well, that's not your data. This isn't a lot of data. That's just census data.
That's census data, yeah. And the 54% of all trips is.
Specific. Okay.
It's not census data. We use Replica, which is one of like the multiple big data companies. So you kind of have to like, they collect everything and then allow you to sort and distribute in a variety of ways. So I wanted to talk a little bit about, just kind of quickly touch on all of the different modes and some of the things that we were seeing and that we've looked at. What's probably not surprising is that when we're talking about people walking along the corridor, it's a pretty low level of comfort. A majority of the sidewalks are less than 3 feet. Current ADA standards are 5 feet wide. The other thing that we found really interesting is that while there appear to be a lot of curb ramps, many of them are what I would classify as accidental or non-intentional curb ramps that, while they allow you to have a slope down to the roadway, they don't actually meet ADA accessibility guidelines. So it's really, if you do have any type of mobility impairment, or if you're a child, if you are getting older, it can be really uncomfortable to walk.
So is what you're referring to primarily the California curb, the sidewalk that angles off to the side? Would you say accidental?
No, there are some places where I think it's a little bit more like driveways, or it was intended to be maybe a curb ramp 30 years ago, but standards have changed significantly since then, and it just isn't quite functioning the way that.
It just doesn't meet current ADA standards.
Well, I could say from use that a lot of those, because roads have been paved over and the angles are now different, that they're now just sheets of ice in the winter because they're drainage collectors.
Yeah.
That's the real issue with them. So yeah, so the opposite of ADA.
Hey, Shida. I do have a question. Are you guys doing this to the 2010 ADA standards or to ProWag?
ProWag.
Okay.
Can you elaborate on that, Derek?
It's just ProWag is not currently adopted by many agencies and everything, and currently Littleton has adopted the 2010 ADA standards, but has acknowledged certain things in their transition plan. And I do know that one of the items that could be a result of the TMP update is a more formal adoption of ProWag for the city of Littleton.
ProWag is just the more modern, is the most recent update of ADA standards for all intents and purposes.
Correct.
So beyond just the fact that where we do have sidewalks, many of them are not comfortable, may not feel safe. We have a lot of drop-offs with the attached sidewalks, which if you slip or if you have a stroller can lead to potential injury. We also have some, a section where there are missing sidewalks, so that's a challenge. We've heard from the community that some people like the fact that there's no sidewalk, and I can understand where they're coming from because of driver behavior and how that changes. But there is also a desire and a need for consistency. So how can we make the corridor safe, feel comfortable to where everybody knows what to expect from a driver behavior and a pedestrian behavior too? So
when I was on the walk, I was with the Aberdeen Village Group along with Shane, and had had several people who live along that corridor where there are no sidewalks clearly say they didn't want sidewalks. And the number one reason I heard is actually they don't want to shovel.
That's a whole different thing.
That got brought up a lot.
It might be a different thing, but it's still gonna be pushed back nonetheless.
Yes.
And
Can I
also.
ask- Sorry, Jeff. Did I just talk over you?
Just shake.
And if this is going to derail us, then don't. But how you mentioned driver behavior changes when there's a sidewalk. How do you, in what way?
Oh, so some of the comments that we heard were that because there isn't a sidewalk, because there aren't as many, you know, like center lines in the area in Aberdeen Village, drivers will more likely, and this is just for what we heard. We haven't actually looked at this.
Okay. Okay.
But community members said that cars will more likely, whether they're walking or biking, move out of their lane to go around them with more distance in that Aberdeen Village area than in other parts of the corridor.
You can see that.
Okay.
And that made them feel safer.
Mhm.
Right or wrong, it was what we heard. It's an interesting, it's just kind of an interesting dynamic of how people driving react to people walking or biking in certain parts of the corridor versus others.
That feels valid. I mean, I think that's, if I think about it, that's my behavior when I'm driving down a street like that. Someone's walking, I try to clear, give them as much distance as possible.
And yet, if there was a sidewalk they were walking on, you wouldn't make that swerve per se. Thanks.
Yeah, thanks, Kelly. I was gonna say with your, the whole issue about like snow plowing and things like that, that's one of the things we've been thinking through. And I think if that continues to come up, one of the conversations we probably need to have with those sections is if maintenance is the true concern here, like if we can solve that, like, would you be on board? And I'm not saying this is the case, but, or is this just like a roadblock to getting upgrades, right? Because if that's the case, then it seems like there's a disagreement on the facility. But if it's truly a maintenance issue, I'm confident that we could kind of work through that when we get further through the project in terms of like actually going to design and construction and things like that. So
Aaron will go out for snowy morning.
with that,
Aaron will show up with a shovel every
yeah, I'm booked up when it snows, so he's gotta.
In that Aberdeen Village area, Shane, do you know if the right of way is the same and they just don't have sidewalks in their yards? Or is it that the gutters go further into their yards than they would in a typical right of way?
Yeah, so I'm pretty sure, you correct me if I'm wrong, the right of way goes outside of the edge of that pan. And so there is some yard that's actually right of way. The street is also very wide, and so like you'll see when we get into some of these options that we put together, where we don't think that, you know, we can accommodate, you know, people walking and biking within the existing pavement, and we don't necessarily need to go into yards. Because that was something we heard too, is like, I don't really want you to tear up my yard, so, which I get.
There's a lot of people that have built structures in the right of way, yards. Code enforcement issues.
So moving on to biking, it's kind of a similar story. It's inconsistent facilities. We have bike lanes in some parts of the corridor. We have protected bike lanes in other parts of the corridor. We also have sections that are shared streets marked with sharrows, and also weird shared bike parking lanes with no markings. So there's a lot going on in a short distance. And as we've seen, I think both of these two bottom pictures show there's a person going through the roundabout choosing to not actually ride in the bike lane, even though there's protections there. And then that bottom picture, we saw a person biking, and where you have that shared biking and parking lane, not only was he riding outside of that, but then where you have the concrete curbs that kind of come out to try and narrow the roadway and slow people down, he actively went on the roadway side instead of on the inside, which is protection for people biking. So it's really interesting to see how people are actually using this. And I will say too that while Elati Street is you know, the posted speed is a slower speed. It's 25 miles an hour, and the traffic volumes are not significantly high. So if you kind of take a really quick look at all ages and abilities, you might think that, and that's kind of what we use as kind of our guide for, is this the right type of facility? You might think that, oh, the speeds aren't high, the volumes aren't high, you could just put a bike lane out there, or, you know, it could be a shared street and that's fine. But because of a variety of different factors and conditions, we know that's actually not the case. So we're trying to be really thoughtful of making sure that we're looking at this in a way that's like, our kids that are going to school, are they going to feel safe? Are people who are maybe older or that ride a bike, you know, infrequently, maybe not with mixed traffic, are they going to be able to feel safe using this corridor?
So I'm not a professional cyclist like Dave, but I've ridden down that road a couple of times with the bike lane, and I veer out too. Because gutters are, I mean, I get nervous going.
Right, there's not a whole lot of room, and a lot of times there's a lot of debris.
Yeah.
So I would say probably 75% of your cyclists are gonna go out on the road.
Absolutely. I mean, I would. So, you know, I think driving is an important thing that we have to talk about. And the 2 points of driving are traffic volumes and speeding. And while you know, we've put out traffic counts for, I think, 2 full weeks, maybe 2 full weeks. So we got volume numbers and speed data. And what it showed was, unsurprisingly, that we got the highest traffic volumes around the schools. So that's, you know, drawing people in, picking up kids, going back out. And then the other thing are the speeds. While the 85th percentile showed us that the speeds were ranging from 28 to 33 miles an hour, depending on where you were on the corridor. What was really interesting to me is that we showed speeds greater than 45 miles an hour on each segment of the corridor, and even had recorded speeds up to 60 miles an hour. Now, that could be a blip, but I think it is.
The high school terrifying.
Yeah. I think it's telling that, you know, there is traffic calming that currently exists along the corridor, and some of what we've seen is some people will slow down just for that, you know, whatever it may be, whether the roadway is narrowed or it's a traffic circle that they have to navigate around. And then, or there's the speed hump by Runyon, and then they're like, I'm going, and I'm gonna go as fast as I can now. And I think that's some of what got picked up in the data collection. So what we're really trying to look at then is, how can we employ traffic calming that is consistent and that's actually effective. Traffic calming, whenever it's kind of sporadic or it changes, people also don't know, what am I supposed to do here? And then some of the traffic calming, you know, whenever you have a bicyclist on the street, how they're supposed to navigate it too, as we've seen, they're maybe not using they're choosing to behave in the way that feels safest to them, but it may not actually be safest overall. So we really need to look at traffic calming and which techniques are going to be able to be most effective on the corridor.
In your professional experience, what you just described, there's a traffic calming, there's a series of traffic calming measures, and then people get through it, they're like, I'm free, time to speed. Is that a common thing? Is that an uncommon thing? Is that something that is known to happen? Because I have seen that.
It's not uncommon, and what doesn't surprise me about it happening on Elati Street is because the roadway is really wide. And I think we'll get into this a little bit more. Yeah, let's actually go ahead and talk about it now. There we go. So one of the biggest reasons why it feels so wide, the roads are actually about 10-foot lanes, but there's parking on each side, 8-foot wide parking lanes on each side. And so drivers see that and they feel like they can go faster. So the design speed is actually very different from the posted speed. And that just, you know, sticks in people's heads, and they're like, I feel like I can go faster. I feel like I should be going faster because of how wide this is. So that's one of the things that I think we've seen be most effective, is when you can insert, you know, vertical elements that help draw people's eyes up and that help feel like the roadway is narrowed. They're naturally going to go a little slower. So some of the traffic calming elements that we're looking at, are intended to do that. And then there are other things that communities do as well. Sometimes street trees are one of the most effective ways to slow people down, in all honesty, because they draw the eye up. They make the roadway feel like it's narrower.
Follow on Jeff's question is, maybe you don't know the answer to this, but which is more dangerous, speed or acceleration to pedestrians and bicyclists on the road?
I mean, I think, and I am not a traffic engineer, I'm only playing one required. But from a safety perspective, what I know we've talked about is the incidents, like the risk is whenever there's potential for a crash and potential for those two different people or modes, whatever it might be, to come together. And when the speed is higher, the risk for severe injury or death is significantly higher. So it's, there's a really great chart that I know AARP and all kinds of agencies, use and reference that shows, like, once you get above 30 miles an hour, from like 30 to 35, the risk increases, and then above 35, the risk increases even more. So it's not even a linear path of risk increase for the level of severity for injury. It's exponential, yeah. Is that helpful? I may not have answered the question.
I'm gonna come back to my question because you actually didn't, you helped, but you didn't answer it. But I'm trying to get it, I'll ask it differently. I do have a concern that we put these traffic calming measures in place. We were doing these pilot projects we're putting in, and that as soon as somebody gets through those, it's like the flag is dropped and now they're off.
Yes.
And so we're almost making it worse because now they're like anxious and like, you just slowed me down. I'm trying to get to wherever I'm going, and now the gas even to go even faster than I was before.
Yes.
Is that a common thing? Because I'm concerned that we might be creating unintended worse outcomes.
When traffic calming measures are applied appropriately and within reason, like where they should be, where it's intended for them to be effective to solve the right problem, then I would say no, that's not a common outcome. But whenever you have traffic calming measures that are maybe inconsistent or that are not well understood, or maybe just they might be effective for one little thing, but it's not looking at the whole picture, that's whenever you see those types of issues.
And it would depend as well on if they go faster than they would have gone without it. Like if the top speeds here are 35, let's say, they get through that slow down area and then they speed up to 35. That's still a net positive because for the section of roads that has those traffic calming measures, they still slow down and they were going to go the same speed anyway.
Yeah, I'll just add that our traffic calming evaluation that we are doing also on the side that's wrapping up. One of the first steps is we need to identify, is the issue a point issue or a corridor issue? And depending on what you find, what they're recommending is using traffic calming in tandem along a corridor if it's a corridor wide issue. So you can't just put in a speed hump at one location along a half-mile section and expect, yeah, we're good, the whole section now will drive at that reduced speed. You need to have them frequently enough that it catches people coming off. And
I hear you on that. My concern is that we focus on this section because this is where the high speeds are. And we unintentionally are now creating high speeds on this section over here because as people get through it, now they're accelerating to try to get through it.
well, one part of that we want to evaluate when we're putting traffic calming is, are people getting to another major connector or arterial roadway that they're turning on and off of? So you want to contain them with that. Is it within that versus is it happening along the entire corridor? Like you're inferring where they get past that traffic calming and now, thank God it's free and I can just go faster. Yeah, you have to take that into consideration too.
Your clarifying question is definitely what I was trying to ask too. Like, is it more dangerous for a car to be going 40 down the Lottie, or is it more dangerous to have a car that goes from 0 to 50? Which one is the more dangerous vehicle, dangerous driver? Because it feels like somebody looking for hit of adrenaline and just slamming the gas is a way more dangerous driver, even though they may max out at 35. Than somebody that just might have gone to 30 the whole way or 35 the whole way. So that's kind of what my question is. I don't know if there's any studies on that, on acceleration versus speed, as to which one is more dangerous from a driver pedestrian standpoint. But and that's why I just want to be very careful about the intervention we do put on this street. Make sure they're not creating more dangerous situations to Jeff's point.
And I'd say part of it too is like what portion of like the transportation network the speed is happening, right? Obviously, we don't want people to speed anywhere, especially through neighborhoods. But at intersections, that's where you have conflict points, right? And that's where a lot of crashes happen. There's still crashes that happen on the segments, but those conflict points at intersections, you know, there less speed could be more dangerous than more speed on a segment, right? Where there's no conflict points. So.
Absolutely. So coming back to one of the points that I had made too was how does the roadway feel? And Elati Street feels wide, partially because there's a lot of unused parking. We did parking counts in the middle of the week and also on the weekend at very early morning. I think it was like 5 a.m. Then middle of the day around lunchtime, and then evening, I think around 6 p.m. To try and capture, you know, whenever people are most likely to be home and then also potentially most likely away. So we can really think about or understand what is that typical maximum parking usage. And what we found was most of the sections of the corridor have more than 60% of their parking unused throughout the day, whether that be during the week or on weekends. You can see in this northern section of the corridor, the part north of Shepherd to Littleton, both in the midweek morning and the weekend morning, those were the times that we saw the highest amount of parking being used. So I pulled those specifically, but those have, you know, up to 40% being used and even up to 50% being used at a given time.
Isn't that the same section that had the least, also the highest number of no car households?
Yes.
Higher density.
Is it because there's no parking provided by the
house itself?
I think one of the things we see too is some of the driveway distances can be a little bit shorter in that section. So I think there's sometimes more people that are parking on street as opposed to within the driveway. And then, I mean, it could also be, you know, people that regularly have friends over, or, you know, there might be people who are staying with them for a while that aren't captured in the census. But then the other part of where we saw parking highest was in that section north of Ridge, almost up to Arapahoe, not quite all the way up to Euclid. And then we also saw some pretty consistent, slightly higher rates around Runyon right across. We're not sure if those are teachers or it was kind of interesting where we saw some of the increase, especially in the middle of the day where Runyon is. But then also on the southern side of the corridor, we did see a little bit of increased parking. So those are things too that we're wanting to factor in to all of this. But for the most part, there is a lot of unused parking, and the community will also tell you that. So for us, this tells us that maybe there's some wiggle room. You know, maybe there's some space that's already within the pavement that we can leverage and kind of reallocate to people wanting to walk and bike and be able to help make that safer for them. So I just want to highlight a little bit. Shane did mention the phase 1 engagement. So our stats from that, you can read those on the screen, but I thought what was really most compelling is that almost everyone agreed that Elati Street should be a safe place for people of all ages to travel along. And then I think the community gave us some really great ideas for improvements that you'll see in the options that we're presenting. So 4-way stops, widening sidewalks, protected bike lanes, decreasing speed limits, and getting rid of traffic circles and plastic bollards. We heard that a lot.
Am I remembering that we talked, it's been a while ago, 4-way stops are actually more prone to have accidents, or do I have?
Not necessarily. They are if you don't have them where it's warranted. So
Maybe that was the discussion, yeah.
so typically you want an all-way stop where it's fairly balanced on the approaches. If it's not, and you have way more traffic on one street than the other, what tends to happen is people on the busy street, every time they come up, they don't see someone waiting on the side street and start going, why is there a stop sign here? They start rolling through and going through faster and faster, especially if it's in a neighborhood.
So would they be appropriate on a laddie then?
There might be some
At
locations.
certain locations? Okay.
I did read that four-way yields are safer than four-way stop signs.
In the right setting, Matt. Yeah, I know what you're talking about. So what he's saying is if you come up with an intersection that just has yield signs at it, you don't know who has the right way. So the tendency is everyone is more cautious. Versus
Yeah.
stop sign, you figure everyone's stopping anyways. If I don't see anyone there, I can just go right through. Right? And so now you might run into an issue where when someone is there, or if they're not looking for pedestrians or bicyclists, right? Now you might have a incident with them.
My least favorite is the no signs on four-way stop, on a four-way section.
Usually reserved for very local connections that have very low volume.
And now I'm editing the slide accidentally. Okay, so what does all this really mean? What we've done is taken all of the data, all of the community feedback, and we put it into these 5 key whys. And these are the 5 things that are guiding our development of the options and also the evaluation and the next steps for decision making. Really the top one is safety. It has to be a top priority. And whenever we think of safety, we're not looking at just the crashes that have already happened because that only tells one part of the story. The other part is the risk. So looking at how risky certain geometric elements are. I'm so not an engineer. But so looking at, where people are stopping, where they're not, where those conflict points are, and really taking that into account with known countermeasures and research that's been done to be able to say, you know what, maybe there haven't been a lot of accidents or not accidents, crashes at this location, but it's pretty risky. And so we should go ahead and think proactively about how to make that safer. The second one, slowing vehicle speeds and traffic calming. We've heard that loud and clear from the community and through the data. The third one is expanding and protecting active transportation infrastructure. And this is really just kind of focusing on the fact that there are so many people on this corridor that are vulnerable. There's a lot of kids. There's an aging population, and to make sure that they have the facilities that they need and want to use and feel comfortable doing that, we really need to make sure that they feel like there's protection and that it is the right type of infrastructure that they would actually use. The other thing that's kind of underlying this is preserving neighborhood character while improving access. So kind of balancing those two pieces. We know that Eladi Street is a neighborhood street. It is not a street like Broadway. We know that the design needs to be different. The improvements need to be considerate of the fact that it is people's front yards. There are a lot of residential driveways, and we want to be conscious of the fact that it's a different type of street, but it still needs to be safe and accessible for everyone. So trying to balance all of that. And then really lastly, if we do this right, we can really support community health and connectivity and help people be able to walk, bike more in the long term, improve those kind of broader health outcomes from a community health perspective. Okay, so I'm gonna go ahead and get into the options. And before I get into the different options that we have, there's some common components for each of these that aren't really called out specifically. So I just wanted to highlight those really quick. One, every single option is going to have fairly consistent improvements that would be focused on lowering speeds. We're also proposing to limit parking to one side of the street along most of the corridor in each of the different options. We have not decided
Which side?
on any side of the street. No, that I think is going to be a next step, but being able to.
Basketball game.
It may not be on the same side throughout the entire corridor. You know, we're trying to also look at what are the different destinations, where does that need to be? Sometimes parking can also be used, you know, if it's one side or the other, it can be used as a natural shift in the roadway, so people aren't just going linearly down the street, which can encourage them to drive faster. So we're looking at how can we best leverage that as a strategy. And then also intersection and crossing enhancements. We're looking at a variety of different treatments and ways to make crossing the street safer. And some of that is shortening those crossing distances. So where you have parking today, maybe taking out some of that parking so you can narrow that distance for people walking. You can also then bring them closer to sight lines for drivers before they actually get into the roadway. Yeah, so those are the pictures here, just kind of highlight what some of those things look like.
To be clear, it's illegal to park within 20 feet of a intersection in Colorado anyway. So it's not parking, even though some of them are using it for that.
It is sometimes very used for that. So option one, this one we're calling the shared path corridor. This is really creating a street that has a safe and shared space for people that has kind of that basic multimodal functionality. The key feature here is that shared use path on one side, so about 10 to 12 feet typically throughout the whole corridor, and the other side of the corridor would be enhanced with an ADA accessible level sidewalk. So still improving the level of access and comfort for the sidewalk on the other side, but really focusing the improvements on one side. And that could also shift, just like, you know, parking could, as far as which side of the road, we don't know. But the other thing about this is that through a lot of the corridor, you would also have a buffer space that would be between the shared use path and the driving lane to provide that extra kind of level of protection for people walking and biking. Now, one of the reasons why we chose this is we did hear from the community that they wanted to see a shared use path. 40% of people who took the survey from phase one said that they would be more likely to bike if there was a shared path provided. Just a couple of other quotes are here on the screen. It's definitely what we've heard is that people want to be able to move, and while shared use path can be a good way to do that, I will say that you get speed differentials that can be an issue. So sometimes people biking are going faster than the people walking. And so, you know, there's a few different pictures here in, you know, how has this maybe been done? The one on the right is actually a rendering, but you know, sometimes paint can be really helpful in just kind of delineating some of that space and communicating, hey, you should really be over here if you're biking, to try and mitigate some of that. But we, you know, you do hear if you go on a trail, you know, sometimes that there's always that conflict between people walking and biking. Any questions before I move on to option two?
Yeah, Aaron, how wide are our snowplows again?
The ones that we use outside the roadways or inside?
On the roadways.
They're, well, essentially we need at least 10.5 feet for the blade.
So if we had a 11, 12-foot shared use path, would you guys be able to maintain that? Like
we do in other places, yeah. I mean, they wouldn't use one of the full size.
Yeah.
They'd use a pickup truck with a blade on it or something like that.
But it'd be easier to maintain than just putting the snow into a bike lane or
yeah,
sidewalk that you wouldn't plow.
I think where you're getting to this is if we do something like a shared use path, the city doesn't then expect the homeowners to shovel all of that, and it would become our grounds responsibility or something like that.
Where do you guys?
Well, I'll take it a slightly different direction, which is would we as a city, would we commit to making sure that that is plowed just as, you know, as quickly as the street or very, very close?
Yeah, I mean, could make that a condition.
It's at your call, but like,
you know, what we're implementing. So far, you know, we don't have a lot of these around, but everywhere we do have them, we do maintain them right now.
Where do we have these, just so?
So think about like the Mineral Trail along Mineral Avenue, all the way along, that's a shared use path, so that is plowed either by the city or South Suburban. Trying to think of where some others that are paved could be, but yeah, I mean, that's what we've done in other places. Now, that's not to be confused with when a development comes in on like an arterial roadway where we say the minimum sidewalk width needs to be 9 or 10 feet. That's still their responsibility. We don't consider that necessarily a shared use path. It's a different type of service being on a busier roadway like that.
I like it a lot.
So just to, it's logical conclusion. So if we went down the shared use path is on one side, the sidewalk is on the other. So whoever has the parking and the sidewalk on their side, those people have to shovel their own sidewalk. The people on the other side don't have parking, so they have to walk across the street to get to their car, but the shared use path is plowed for them. The trade-offs. Okay.
Or you could put the parking on the other side.
That feels fair. Like I get to park right on my side.
But I have to shovel. Seems like a great trade-off.
The neighbor across the street has to walk across the street, but they don't have to shovel. I mean,
Interesting idea.
It also pushes kind of the travel lanes into the middle of the roadway versus if we had shared use path parking and then the travel lanes, like now somebody's like, well, you're pushing cars much closer to my house. Yeah, right, than they were before. It's great that they're going slower, but, and one thing I wanted to point out on this option is that second cross section down, that's kind of the Aberdeen Village option where we show, hey, you know, not putting sidewalk, but here's what it might look like. Can we put some sort of barrier between the travel lanes and designate a space where, you know, if somebody does make a mistake and start to go over into that shared space, that they, you know, have some sort of tactile reaction or warning that they're not in the right space, without kind of going to full blown sidewalks.
I think that's pretty cool because that might keep the Aberdeen Village character.
Right, yeah.
The way it is. Would you guys paint Aberdeen Village or would that be still kind of an open street, but you would have painted delineation for the shared use path and the walkway?
That's all like TBD, like the particular materials that we.
Floating around up there, Shane.
What's floating around is all the comments we get about how much people hate the white posts. So,
Yes.
So probably wouldn't be white posts, but you know, this is something too that if, you know, everybody is like, hey, we actually kind of like this where we have a designated walking space. That could be something where we work with maybe, you know, the HOA or the neighborhood and say, maybe it's something a little more fancy that you guys maintain, right? Maybe it's planters or something like that that fits the character of the neighborhood, and maybe as part of a construction project, the city pays for it initially, but the, you know, the HOA pays for it moving forward. So
that'd be something that would be open to this design as well.
Yeah.
So it's a little bit more novel and.
Yeah.
last on the parking, just the way that design is, I'm seeing that down by south of Ridge, there would be no on-street parking, at least in this option.
Are you talking about number 3 or 4?
Both of those are south of Ridge, right?
Yes, so number 3 is referencing, let's go up to the side. So number 3 is referencing that area between Cayley and the Highline Canal Trail. And there are just some sections today that don't have parking allowed on either side. And so that's the 4th one down, that's number 3. That one is actually just representative of where there's no parking today, and that would be maybe, here's what it could look like. And then the one at the very bottom is where you have the legal trail crossing and that bridge. So that's really just showing the edge of the bridge to show kind of what that would look like, just right there in that section.
Okay. I guess I didn't realize there were 2 3s there.
Okay, so our second option is what we're calling a bike focused corridor. And this is really, the idea is to create more of a multimodal street with dedicated and separate use cases for each of the different modes. Here we have ADA compliant or wider sidewalks, sometimes 5-6 feet, sometimes maybe a little bit more than that. But the real key piece here is a protected 2-way bike lane. And it doesn't necessarily have to be a protected 2-way bike lane, but we were trying to think about how do we minimize going into the right of way as much as possible while also maximizing the protection. We felt that if we were to have bike lanes on each side, that you would still want to have that buffer for each. So taking away the parking and having that buffer space, it just starts to feel a little cramped. So this is kind of where, if you're thinking of all ages and abilities as well, it's not just the bike lane itself, it's the whole space of the bike lane, plus, you know, both bike lanes, plus the buffer space. We wouldn't have, you know, you wouldn't have anything vertically separating either of the lanes. So for the number of people who are biking at a given time on a Lottie Street, kind of from what we've seen, we think that this kind of configuration would support that. Also allow people to sometimes be able to ride a little bit more, you know, kind of next to each other, while still having some of that separation.
In this image, are these all like the little tiny, they may be called armadillo things in the road, like in the stripe sections?
Yeah, armadillo or button, or, you know, just kind of something that raises up to where there's a vertical protection. That could be those cast in place curbs that you might put down here and there. So you'd still have permeability for people biking to be able to get out if they needed to. You'd also, you know, that way you're also not impacting drainage as much. You don't want like a consistent curb. You're gonna have to have permeability there. But yeah, something that really kind of, if a driver, you know, kind of goes a little too far, they're going to really feel that and be like, I shouldn't be here.
But it wouldn't do anything to their car. And if they wanted to drive over it, they could just drive right over it without any negative consequences, right?
It depends on what we use. So I don't know if you've been on Phillips, Pennsylvania. I can never remember. Phillips. Yeah. So on Phillips, we have, I don't know, I think those are called armadillos. I can't keep up with which names apply to which devices. But they're pretty abrupt. I mean, I think they're 6 or 7 inches high. I mean, so if you went over it at speed, you could definitely damage your car. And we're starting to move, I'll say this without committing, but I think kind of anecdotally, we've started to use those and seem to like those better than the plastic curbs, which have a lower profile or maybe only 3 or 4 inches. And those you can go over, you know, without, you could not feel it and it won't hurt your car. But these new things are more solid rubber. You will definitely feel it. And it does offer some actual protection where it will deflect the vehicle back away from the space.
Yeah, it doesn't seem like it's as protective as it could be.
Well, it's not. I mean, you could always build a 10-foot high concrete wall.
I don't think I'm meaning that. Yeah.
No, that's fair. That's absolutely fair. And that's kind of part of the, how do we do this while still feeling like there's, you know, you're in a neighborhood and not on Broadway, for example, or, you know, on a street downtown or something where it feels maybe a little over engineered. We heard that a lot from the community. And that's just kind of the position here that we're proposing. So.
Yeah. Can I ask so I understand like that this isn't Broadway, but Broadway is also not at all bikeable. And if we're saying like we can't do this, we don't have good infrastructure on Broadway, and then the parallel path that people would travel on, we say we don't want to harm the character of the neighborhood to make it really safe. It seems like safety is not the top concern.
That's fair. Whenever I say Broadway, I'm thinking of North Broadway in Denver, where they have the protected bike lanes.
So,
Yeah, sorry.
the opposite of what we have.
Yeah.
So, but I mean, it does seem like there's always considerations that are placed higher than safety, but we're saying safety is the top priority.
Well, and so I think, Matt, like, so the space in between there is kind of undefined, I would say. We don't have like a prescribed, I mean, it could be a whole nother curve, right? We're just kind of laying out the space and everything like that to see what it is. So it could be something that's retrofitted afterward. It could be something that's built. I mean, if you look at all of these cross sections, I don't know if you can see it real well on the screen, but there's a gray line that shows edge of existing pavement, and then there's an orange line that shows existing right of way. So that space in between is what people perceive to be their yard in a lot of cases. And so in all of these options, we'd actually be going outside of that pavement. And so that's one of the things we consider. If we're already we're already tearing up what is perceived to be yards and constructing new stuff, we probably just go ahead and build some concrete protection in.
Yeah, but my assumption is that it would be prohibitively expensive to go into yards.
Yeah, it could be, right? And that's what we're, figuring out. We're not quite at that stage yet.
And yeah,
Right away, it's in a yard.
Well, versus, so we don't have to buy it necessarily, but constructing new portions of the street, because then you may have to reconstruct the whole street depending on what you're doing, versus retrofitting what's there, leaving existing, drainage intact, stuff like that.
I mean,
Because you said drainage, Aberdeen doesn't have curb and gutter.
No, they have pans. Yeah.
Is it gonna be more expensive from a drainage perspective to do something like this through Aberdeen?
That would be, yeah. I mean, then you have to start talking about, okay, can we keep the existing water flow where it is? And I don't know much about water quality, but like, once you start directing it, like, do we have to put in some sewer then underneath the street, connect into other storm sewers? So.
It can get very expensive.
Yeah, I think so.
the other thing that I'll mention, Matt, is that there is also potential for, instead of just having an armadillo or something like that, you could also elevate it to be at sidewalk level, which gives you that vertical protection too. And so you can still have buffer space. I wouldn't want a bike lane to then just cut off right next to a drive lane. But that's a way that a lot of communities have provided additional protection too, is just kind of bringing it up a level.
Yeah, I think that's a really fantastic approach. And then especially if it continues across at that same level at the intersections too.
Yeah. And you'll see, I think the third picture on the top here is actually showing a two-way cycle track in a neighborhood that's actually at sidewalk level. It's kind of hard to tell from the perspective, but that is where that is. So there is some precedent, and we're seeing a lot more use of things like cycle tracks in neighborhood context. Before, that was something that was kind of traditionally done in very downtown or more urban areas, but kind of just that ability to have more of that dedicated space and the protection is really being shown to be useful in a lot of different contexts.
Kind of getting, I don't know what everyone settled on the Broadway corridor study, but it looks more Broadway, this option, last option. So I wonder how neighbors would feel about that, and did the Broadway corridor study have two-way cycle tracks, or was it one on either side?
Yeah, one on either side.
Okay. So there might even be confusion by having a two-way cycle track walk off of Broadway as well.
Yeah, there could be, and there's always trade-offs. I mean, with a two-way cycle track, right, and driver expectancy when you're crossing it. So.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'll just say that this photo on the bottom right is actually showing a sidewalk in a neighborhood area that is decomposed granite. And so if you look at that number 2 option here, and how the walk space is actually brown, that's just kind of highlighting that maybe this is a
true sidewalk.
Yeah, maybe this is granite or something. It's just kind of something we wanted to put out there and see how the community felt about the type of material. Because I think really at the end of the day, having a better space that's delineated for people is the biggest need, versus it has to be pavement or it has to be, fitting a certain preconceived idea of what a walk space is. So being able to kind of really kind of feel out what's the community.
How does that fit with ADA?
It's not what I don't want to do a double negative. It can be
not against ADA.
It can be ADA compliant. I do think that you can have a little bit more issues potentially with like maintenance and clearing. You have to, like, the drainage has to be really thought through there. But it can be done, and it can be ADA accessible.
It's for a trail people would be at.
I know, right? Yeah, we have the concept to have pressure fines along our road, right? That could be even in the shared use path environment. Stay into that.
We took out crusher fine at the mineral trail, and it was quite an issue for some of the neighbors. So I guess I feel like if we're putting it in other places, that might also not be a consistent message.
Sure, yeah, and one of the things, so like, in a context like this, let's say, you know, the whole street came to us and said, hey, this is what we want some sort of like decomposed granite or crusher fine trail. That would be an option, but what would be off the table is probably the city maintaining it. So we're like, okay, let's say we get the money, we get a grant to build it. We're not gonna be maintaining it in perpetuity. And I can't say for sure we wouldn't do that. I don't know, maybe we win the lotto and we feel very nice, but, and that was the issue with that trail on Mineral, is that that was, you know, City of Littleton property maintained by South Suburban. And through the design process, for like, hey, we know this is a much bigger air if we have crusher fines here versus a paved trail, so.
How many lottery tickets does Littleton buy every week?
So our third option here, we're calling it a pedestrian focused corridor. And this is really kind of expanding the sidewalk areas on both sides to be, you know, 5 to 8 feet, depending on where you are along the corridor. Having that buffer space, you'll kind of notice that the bike focused does not actually have that ability to have a landscaped buffer space, or even if it's just rock or, you know, some sort of natural elements. It doesn't necessarily have to be trees and like fully landscaped, but so this kind of brings that back as a feature, but it does remove the actual bike facility from the corridor. This would assume that you would move the bike lane and from Elati Street to a different corridor. I'm not necessarily saying that we are recommending this, but it's important to, you know, kind of put things out there for the public to react to. And I think that this also helps us, you know, kind of better gauge what is more important for the community. So what we really want to do is take the input that we receive on all of the different options and then be able to kind of maybe meld them together in a way that's not just choosing A, B, or C right now, or 1, 2, and 3. It's okay, here's the best parts of this, and here's what the community really wants to see from this other piece. Can we, you know, pull those things together?
What have you heard so far in the surveys?
I haven't looked.
Oh, for this round or for the previous round?
I can tell you on my walk, the people I talked to overwhelmingly like the shared use.
I have not looked yet. Although we did have almost 300 website, like unique users on the public meeting as of earlier this
Tuesday.
week. Yeah, Tuesday. And I think about 100 of them had filled out the survey, or
I think it was, yeah, like 77 is what I
okay,
remember, yeah. Which is pretty good. And we're gonna promote this stuff online too through promoted social media posts. So according to Katie with HDR, who's their public engagement person for this project, that's pretty good so far for it to be so new and not be promoted. I don't know, but she's a very trustworthy person, so.
My concerns on this one is just there's no clarity as to where real vehicles belong. And so people walking on the sidewalk, and the sidewalk's obviously big enough for a kid to ride their bike on. You're gonna get people yelling at them in the street, and then you're gonna get people saying, I don't belong in the street, I wanna go on the sidewalk. And so I can see just anxiety and frustration without that clarity. Sure.
absolutely.
Where would the bicyclists be expected to be on this option 3?
They ride through everyone's backyard.
The buffer zone.
They would actually be expected to be in the roadway, and that's kind of where the traffic calming, you know, the consistent traffic calming, kind of slower street components would come into play for this option.
That feels dangerous to me because there is no option for them to pass in this even in the current configuration, but especially in this one too, that even more narrow. And I was riding my bike south, pulling up to the 3-way stop at Euclid, and I was in the road because I was going to take a left, and the car was just laying on their horn behind me, and there was no tolerance for me taking up any space in the street whatsoever. And we went from, like, you know, 80% of kids walking or riding their bikes to school to 10% or whatever it is in the US right now. And this would seem to disincentivize kids riding their bikes even more.
Yeah, and I think, we hear that feedback, and so I think, on a larger level, we're trying to throw kind of different things out there and not just presume like, oh, well, we think, option E or F is the best, so let's just show one. We're kind of throwing everything out there, even though we might have some reservations about each one. The other thing that's hard to show in cross-section that you would see in plan view is kind of the idea of implementing some sort of neighborhood bikeway where there is not just kind of periodic traffic calming, but very aggressive traffic calming. And again, right, like if you're a kid, that's probably still not very comfortable. You don't care if the car is going 20 versus 30. It's a giant, you're inexperienced in the roadway and it's a giant metal thing. So we hear that feedback, but also there's some things that are hard to kind of communicate with just the level of detail that we're at.
Yeah, and I think too, I understand like wanting different perspectives. I think often the end result is better if you do that. But I think it seems like at the heart of multimodal transportation to enable all modes of transportation in a safe, comfortable way. And it doesn't like I struggle to see the presenting a no bikes on a on a school street um option, even presenting it to the public, because that I can't comprehend having no options for bicycles to ride safely.
Sure. Yeah, that's good feedback. And I think, like to Josh's point, I mean, kids are going to ride on the sidewalk. And maybe I'm showing our cards here with parking enforcement. We have one parking enforcement officer, and I don't think she's, going to, or, I guess our officers are not going to enforce this, right? They're not out there trying to bust, middle schoolers who are riding on the sidewalk. But it's a good point that it creates confusion, right? And then you have that conflict of like, on the sidewalk, and so.
Yeah, and our public comment tonight too, someone was saying, as a pedestrian who's had bikes whiz by me on the sidewalk, I don't think bikes belong on the sidewalk. That's too big of a gap in speed.
Be clear. I mean, while I'm not saying we're promoting it and saying it should happen, it is absolutely legal to ride your bike on a sidewalk. It's 100%. Like you go on CDOT's website, it's very clearly there. Yes, and so it's not illegal. And actually, Reed during that city council study session clarified it. It's just people were talking over him, so it's hard to go. But it is absolutely legal to ride your bike on the sidewalk. Never an issue. It's just maybe not preferred, not preferable.
And having kids, middle-aged school kids, like something I know about children, this is probably true for a lot of adults, is that comfort comes with knowing the rules. And if the rules aren't clear, there's going to always be a level of uncomfortability. So, and if our whole goal is to get people doing the things we want to do or what they want to do in any way, do it. Making sure it's as comfortable as possible is has to be part of that.
Right.
So, well, it's a great option, but it's not my favorite.
So I just want to highlight where we are right now. We're currently in phase 2 of our engagement period. We just yesterday had a meeting with our student ambassadors. So they have a homework assignment to go and collect feedback. We've pulled some key survey questions and asked them to go and talk to their friends and family members and neighbors. And
what ages in schools?
We are at Heritage High School. So high school. So we're asking them to kind of go out and talk to at least 10 people each, which not only gives us some survey feedback through those questions, but it's also really kind of helping people know what's going on with the project and giving them like, oh, hey, to learn more, go here. So it's really just kind of also helping put the message out that we're doing this project.
Would it be time to add 8th graders from Euclid?
I was just going to say the same thing because it's in the middle of the corridor.
They're the ones who use it right now.
Seems like it'd be more valuable to get their input.
I mean, I think I'd be happy to, go do an event at Euclid if we could.
I'd be open to it.
Yeah.
If you get a connection, let me know.
Yeah, I know we have a connection with them through all the stuff that's gone on Euclid Street right there with the recent construction. So yeah, that's something we could kind of spitball and stuff like that. If you've got ideas, or specific people.
Or even just talking to them.
Yeah.
There may even be, I don't know who you were talking to at Heritage, but the 9th graders that just got out of Euclid might be a good group as well.
Yeah.
We have a lot of feedback.
So we are, in addition to the online meeting, we are also planning on putting information out at various community events. We're sending Aaron with a whole bunch of flyers to promote the project and the online meeting at the
East Community Center.
Yeah, the resource fair.
Yeah, the resource fair. And then we've talked about a variety of other events too, and we're checking in to see if we can get a booth. I don't know if we've heard back about the craft fair, so we're trying to get into that as well. And then, of course, as Shane mentioned, and you all know, we did a walk audit a couple of weeks ago that really kind of helped kick this off, where we heard some really fantastic information from the community. We had about 50 people come, and it really helped us kind of just understand from their perspectives, and also what the community members that live along the corridor are seeing every day. You know, our team has gone out there multiple times and walked and biked and drove the corridor, but you know, we're gonna miss things because we don't live there. So it was really helpful to kind of understand some more nuance of what's happening on the corridor and really get perspective on, you know, the current treatments that are out there and also what they would like to see.
I think I'll add with the walk audit, at least something that happened in the group that I was with, is we had people, and I was in the Aberdeen Village focused group, is that we had some folks who at the beginning of the walk audit were like, we don't want anything, like, we're just here to say, don't change our street. And one of their neighbors, you know, they were legacy residents, had been in Littleton for a while. One of their neighbors came who had younger kids, like, well, actually, you know, my son goes to Euclid and we're not that far away. There's no way I'm letting him bike to Euclid down Elodie Street in the current condition. And so by the end of it, like, because they respect each other and they see each other, they're like, okay, well, I could see like how, yeah, okay, that's kind of scary for a middle schooler. And so, you know, they warmed up to the idea of a shared use path, which I think we heard from several groups is the most popular of the options. But that was something I didn't expect. I thought it'd just be more kind of engagement, and I didn't anticipate the neighbors and the people with differing views getting to talk face to face. So.
That was a really fun day. So what's next? After we get through the summer community engagement, we're really going to be finalizing evaluations. So we're going to be pairing community feedback with, you know, some contextual understanding of how well does any of the options meet the goals of the project, and also using data to kind of bring all of it together to say, here's what's preferred. And then we're also going to be doing some early design work. So we're going to be identifying key improvement locations to move the project into kind of a 30% design. So where we have, you know, definitely not everything, but we have a little bit more of a look at drainage, you know, the feasibility, and also good cost estimates for the city. And then we're also going to be providing a handful of quick build designs for the city to be able to go and quickly implement. And the picture here is actually from the city's traffic calming toolbox. So we are, just for your knowledge, we are leveraging the important work that's already been done and kind of building off of that, so that we're making sure everything that we're recommending is in sync with the work the city is already doing. And then the other piece of that is implementation. So we'll be developing an implementation plan where we're going to be thinking through things like phasing. You know, how can we break this project down into implementable chunks while that also still meet the goals? And it can be hard to say, okay, we're going to do this here. Well, then what happens on the rest of the corridor? So we're really going to be putting some thought into how can the city accomplish this project, get more information on costs and also funding opportunities. And then also, I think Shane and Aaron have mentioned a couple of times the policy aspect. So we are going to be digging into some policies and programs as well that the city might be able to implement to really help provide the right foundation for implementation of the project, and also encourage use, and also not only encourage use of you know, more walking and biking, but also some of those programs might help to support changes in driver behavior or even behavior of people walking and biking, so that we can start to kind of get some of those you know, maybe bad issues start to correct them. It's something that takes a lot of time, but there are some really great programs that communities have enacted that can support that. So it's not always a design consideration. I tend to think of all of the policies, programs, and infrastructure projects having to work all together to be able to do or long-lasting change.
Yeah, and I'll add that, as far as kind of like feedback from you guys and how you can help us out is, as you know, we applied for a grant to do 10 more corridors throughout the city, and we were unsuccessful in that grant. So one of the things we're considering is like, okay, how do we still think these other 10 corridors are a priority, and this study is supposed to set the stage. So how do we maybe take the lesson, not maybe, how do we take the lessons learned from this study and then apply it to those other corridors and maybe do it in a way that's a little bit leaner than we had anticipated before. So feedback from you all, and as you talk to other folks in the community about like what things in the study worked really well, and what things maybe need to be revised or dropped so that we can use that going into those subsequent corridor studies and, and have good outcomes, so.
That's it. I know we're a little long. I had some fun discussion questions thinking this was gonna be, 20 minutes. We're gonna get through it. We need some more prompt stuff to talk about.
So I'm sorry, if you said that this, the next steps, what are we thinking will be a design phase? Timeline?
Beginning of October. So as soon as community engagement ends, we're gonna start that next step of completing the evaluation and then going straight into the design pieces. And we're gonna be doing that concurrently with the implementation plan.
So end of
the year. December is whenever, early December is whenever we plan to have kind of the draft full plan.
Will there be any cost estimates before you go into design? I guess if one is like tremendously more expensive and just not obtainable.
We do have within
that?
Yeah, within the evaluation, we kind of have a rough order of magnitude cost for all of the different types of improvements. So depending on, is it a feature that's, 1, 2, or 3 locations along corridor? Is it corridor wide? We can kind of have an understanding of just kind of that level of magnitude, and that goes into part of the decision making for what's the preferred alternative.
That's great.
Thank you very much.
Thanks a lot.
You guys are fun. What are you talking about?
We're the fun board. We're no fun notice. All right. We are. Yeah. Broadway.
Do we need a quick 2 or 3 minute break, or?
You're presenting. Do you need the quick 2 or 3 break?
I would take a quick 2. I could hold it.
Let's take a 3-minute break.
All right.
Well, it's 7:53. We'll pick back up again at 7:57.
Plus, this is Aaron's presentation next, right?
What am I presenting on?
Aaron's the better decisions.
Sure, no problem.
When did you sneak in? I didn't see you. You were very quiet. Stealthy.
Really, I got to claim that you were pretty well. There was a candidate for us. So.
I know. Upstaged us. I know how it goes.
Really.
Right? You noticed that Mr. Reichard is not here.
He was in the audience.
Oh, I know he was over there.
Back up. Between Alice and Chloe.
You bite into one of these.
They're a little hard.
Yeah, this one's, it's close.
I saw.
It's pretty firm, actually.
She brought it.
Yeah. This is gonna bridge.
Where are you off to?
Oh, we've got 2 friends coming in back there.
I'm on a mission to get rid of
Put me down to.
good use.
Okay.
Dallas.
Cool.
That's because.
Fun.
Wait,
Nice yourself. I think it's
switch over to the other side because it curved.
Eugene, so.
I'm having.
Until I fix.
There you go.
There's no sidewalk.
And she just went here and answered more of my questions. So I wish I just heard that ahead of time. That's fine. I gotta look at things.
Yeah, but I also that walk.
Not my pick.
Oliver's not.
I'm also concerned, I mean, get. It doesn't like.
We're going to get that.
I think that's gonna be a hard sell through Aberdeen Village.
It's gonna be hard for them to figure out.
Sidewalks, they're not gonna.
Everybody.
Well,
Bikes, no.
it's more on the same side.
Two, my friend.
Right,
Yeah.
Shirley.
Crazy.
Yeah, boy, yeah, sure, that too. Yeah,
They don't think anybody's coming.
yeah, that's a good point.
My wife's actually gonna go and sit there with me.
Oh, that's so
Just,
good.
so if I need to, she'll jump in.
Sounds good.
For the presentation.
I know, but
and
it's
Think about when you see cyclists coming down.
That makes it easier, right?
It's a long way. It's traffic and how that, you don't expect. Suddenly.
It's startling, yeah.
I think they have some.
Oh, yeah,
Same.
And I suppose
See, it's community Wi-Fi.
probably has some.
I think they have community people.
And a lot of it doesn't have.
Zoom always want to make Matt's head the biggest thing on the screen.
Every time.
I think it's his computer.
I think it is too.
Zoom in on.
Lens, yes.
It's the
It
lens
doesn't do that. It stays wherever it is.
Why doesn't zoom in and out? I was wondering that before. Like, is it the computer? Is it special software?
Oh, yeah, what does he do? Look.
That's true. He would know.
Seeing.
He's in a trance right now, though.
Yes.
Yeah. What I have
He doesn't
found,
know that we can see him.
Or that we're talking about him.
so one of the things I have found is by wearing glasses when you're on Zoom, it gives away to people when you're doing something else.
Yeah.
Oh, because you can see the reflection?
You're like, I see you scroll.
Oh, yeah.
Like, come on, get back on track here, guy.
Stage advice right there. Like, need to be more careful. Give this to you.
Definitely had that.
These are good tips. I'm taking them down.
Yeah. I can see Twitter on your screen.
I see you were answering an email. Come on, get back to us here.
Yeah, it's just.
All right. 7:57.
Right view here. Okay, so this is the Broadway HSIP project. So we've been talking about Broadway a little bit in relation to Halati. But this is a project that's fairly new. I think we've talked about it a few times, but wanted to give you guys an update, talk about policy implications, things like that, and give any feedback you guys might have. So Broadway HSIP intersection project. There's a lag, there we go. These are the things that we'll discuss today. So some project background, we'll go over design concepts, talk about budget and funding, which will be a fun, but maybe, yeah, we'll see. And then timeline engagement, what we're doing to engage the public and specifically the businesses around intersections and what next steps are. And just in case, I probably should not assume this, but when I say intersections, the two intersections we're talking about are Broadway and Littleton and Broadway and Mineral. So HSIP stand. Yeah, great question. So this slide right here, thanks for queuing me up. So HSIP stands for the Highway Safety Improvement Program. And so it's federal funding that comes down through the federal government to CDOT for CDOT to distribute through for safety projects. And so the background on this project is that one of the first projects that I started on here when I started for the city of Littleton was the Broadway corridor study. And so late 2018, early 2019, we put in a TIP grant application for the Broadway corridor study, knowing that there are several issues on Broadway. This was right on the heels of RTD's BRT feasibility study. And we thought, hey, it'd be a great opportunity for a grant to kind of get ahead of this, make sure that out of this whole, regional effort that is going to put in BRT, that Littleton's interests are really preserved. And so we're like, let's get some grant money and do some design early on, do some early actions on our own. So the way that works is in the TIP process, everybody in Arapahoe County gets together, they submit all their projects, everybody evaluates all the projects for the region, and then we all come together and draw a line in the sand and say, based on the scoring criteria that we get from Dr. Cog, all these projects above the line get funded and all the ones below don't get funded. Unfortunately, at the time, the Broadway Corridor Study did not get funded initially. And so after that is when we pursued HSIP. That was an opportunity that came up early 2020 is when it came. So just on the heels of the TMP, we knew that specifically Broadway and Mineral and Broadway and Littleton were intersections that had bottleneck issues and they had safety issues. So we applied for that, found out we got the funding, and then shortly after that also found out that more funding became available through the last TIP cycle. There was a couple of projects in front of us. They both said, hey, we're not interested in funding these projects anymore. We've already moved on, either to fund them ourselves or we're not interested in doing them. And so the Broadway Corridor Study got funded. So as far as kind of the funding timeline and those two projects, it's a little bit serendipitous in that we started the Broadway Corridor Study so we could have this big regional vision for the corridor. And then the HSIP funding came in after that based on kind of the timing of the grant so we could actually design and construct something. So is that adequate background? That was kind of a long.
That was a lot.
Okay. Fully understood. Yeah, all right. So there's the background. So as part of, these are two screenshots from our actual grant application. And so with the grant application for HSIP, at the time, we didn't really know what the fixes would be, but we knew what the problems were, as I said, coming out of the TMP. And so right here, this is the map that we included in our HSIP application that shows several of the issues that we had identified as part of, so we did a study too on the build up to the HSIP grant opportunity to look at the different issues and start to identify some of the solutions. At this point, we had just identified the specific issues. And so that's what we submitted for the grant opportunity. So there's, I can send these to you if you want to read through each one, but I think there's a couple on each intersection that are worth highlighting. So first, this is Broadway and Littleton, just to give everyone, locate everyone. In the northwest corner of the intersection, so that's the Chipotle there. If you've been through there, you know that with Chipotle, Arby's, and then the new gas station, that there's several accesses that are very close to the intersection. And from a safety perspective, we're not a big fan of that, right? It's already there, so the goal is not to go just close off Chipotle's access so they can no longer serve customers. But we know that that is one of the things that sets up car crashes, right? Because people pull out unexpectedly, or you're making a turn and then the car in front of you stops unexpectedly because they're trying to access the business. So access is one of the issues in this corner. The southbound, so southbound traffic, the buses can use that right turn lane and actually go through the painted work out there in the southwest corner to proceed down to the bus stop. We got the award, and I say that tongue in cheek, not really an award, but in 2018 or 2019, Arapahoe County did a safety study of the entire county. And this was the one intersection that had the most collisions between passenger vehicles and transit vehicles. And it's because of the issues in this corner here. Not just that buses can go through, but also that bus stop is just south of that right turn lane. And so a lot of times when traffic is heavy, people are looking over their left shoulder and they go to shoot a gap and they turn around and there's a stop bus right in front of them. So the northbound left turn lanes, if you've driven up Broadway there, you know that left lane, the left-hand through lane turns into a drop left-hand turn lane, which is not very common. So it creates issues with driver expectancy. And then just east-west with Littleton High School being just off the screen to the right, we have a lot of people who are crossing here at odd times of the day, right, middle of the day, also during the peak hour for vehicle traffic. And so it causes issues with trying to get everybody across this intersection in a timely manner in a way that's also safe. So I don't think any of that's news, but if you have any questions.
I just like the term painted pork chop.
Yeah.
You know what that means. I could go back and
It's right there at the corner.
Maybe later, Shane, maybe later.
Here's the next intersection, Broadway and Mineral. This has also has safety issues, but a little bit of a different monster down at Broadway and Mineral. The intersection is a little bit newer, but there's still several issues. So if we look at that east leg of the intersection where you can see the word mineral right there, if you made that westbound left turn to southbound Broadway, you know that the turn lanes are kind of at this weird angle and there's not a whole lot of capacity. At the time those were designed and constructed, that was plenty of capacity for the number of people making left turns there. It's not anymore. And so what happens is people stop in that storage area that's under capacity now, and then that queue spills out into the through lanes, which causes crashes because people aren't expecting to stop, or people make risky moves to try to get around them and swerve into the other lane and hit folks. So on the northbound lanes, we know that our northbound left turn, that's a pretty long left turn lane as it is, but it's at capacity. We really need to up. And then the northbound right turn lane, it is a drop lane right now. So we have the width on the other side of the intersection, but that's a drop lane where you're required to turn right. It's a little bit of a short one in that you come over the bluff and then you see the right turn lane must turn right. And if you're not familiar with that, people tend to, panic a little bit and kind of try to merge back in traffic. So just some of the issues we have here, but those are the ones that I thought were worth pointing out, probably ones that you've experienced. So Aaron, anything you add to either of those is big?
Just, you mentioned at Littleton Boulevard, the need for a lot of pedestrians crossing. At Mineral, we're trying to create a condition where Mineral Avenue is kind of a bike thoroughfare through our city, because it's, I don't know if you know this, the only east-west street in Littleton that continues east of the city and west of the city. No other east-west street does. So it's a pretty important corridor. Plus you've got the hospital along it, a lot of other businesses, we'll have Costco along there and stuff. So our vision, big picture of Mineral is providing a very nice protected bikeway all the way along there. We don't want to stop it at a major intersection like this. So another consideration is, how do we safely get bikes east-west through here?
So this is just kind of a little reminder on the Broadway corridor study and the vision that the Broadway corridor study set for Broadway, and not by default, but in also these intersections. So just a few bullets. So one of the first things we did with the Broadway corridor study is we went out, and was a multi-jurisdictional study. So it was Douglas County, Arapahoe County, Centennial, Inglewood, and Denver, and us. Went out to the community up and down the corridor and said, hey, what do you want Broadway to become when it grows up? And overwhelmingly, people said, we don't want another Santa Fe. We don't want another university. We like the area of Broadway, like through downtown Inglewood, where it feels more Main Street, right? Where there's spaces for people to hang out and there's small businesses and things like that. So that's what we use as kind of the guiding direction. We've developed our values out of that and our vision for the corridor out of that and move forward. So, we are, as part of that study, we prioritized walking, biking, and transit accessibility. Not that we're saying we don't want cars to be on there, but so far on most of Broadway, cars have been the only thing that have been prioritized. So how do we look at those other modes of transportation and create those spaces? We also wanted to preserve local business access and connectivity, understanding that if you want a vibrant community, you can't come in and do something that harms all your businesses, right? So how do we balance that? And then also, recommended targeted signal and intersection upgrades. It really with the idea of you can go too far in one direction, where if you don't address vehicular capacity or vehicular operations, especially at intersections, then you actually create a more dangerous situation. And so establishing minimum level of service at intersections for the idea of being safe and maintaining safety, right? But also just looking at what upgrades could be made at those intersections, both physical as well as the way the intersection works from a signal standpoint. Oh, yes, Matt.
Do you have something, Matt?
Did it show my hand or something?
It showed that you did something.
Something popped up about going to the
Oh,
grocery.
I just dropped a picture into the chat if you want to pull it. Trying to go to the grocery store on our bikes. And right by that area.
Good luck.
Yeah. I'll rely on Aaron to make this work for us. Come on, Aaron.
Not sure if you can.
Thanks for the picture.
Yeah.
I'll have to send that out afterward. I'm not sure how to share. I can see it on my screen, but I'm not sure why it's not on their screen. Yeah, I mean, I can. But very uncomfortable, right? Uncomfortable writing.
Did you bring shears with you, Matt? Is that what you were trying to tell us?
No. No, and that like right anyway, I'd go on a rant about this. Right lane is like 30 feet wide. So it's really straight up there too.
Yeah, definitely.
So through this project, we kicked off last summer and we started with just what the Broadway corridor study had. And so like with any project, what we want to do is take existing conditions data. And the Broadway corridor study was very high level, looked at high level traffic data. But with this project, we had traffic engineers really dive into the numbers and the operations at both intersections. And so there's some modifications from the Broadway corridor study. Like in the Broadway corridor study, a lot of the intersections, it's like, hey, high level, it seems like you could drop a turn lane here, drop a turn lane there, and still be okay. You're not going to, any safety issues. When we went back through and did a more detailed evaluation, it turns out some of these turn lanes that we wanted to drop are actually going to become an issue in the not too distant future. And so some of those got added back in. But the core of it is that, the whole point of the Broadway corridor study is to not just prioritize cars, but how do we get people up and down the corridor if they're walking, biking, and so this is green areas in here. That's supposed to be space for bikes. The kind of tan or sand color, that's amenity area, and then the gray that's outside of the green would be sidewalk. So it's a little bit hard to see, and north is to your left, by the way, to make it fit on the picture here. Chipotle is down in the bottom left corner. So that's just to orient you with what you're seeing here. Now, the reason it's so zoomed in on the intersection is because to start with our concept, we told our design consultant, hey, let's not start off by limiting ourselves when we start with the vision, right? Let's look at the intersection as our goal to fix, but let's go as far out as we need to address the issues that we think are important. So we've done that, and this will tie into the budget conversation. Turns out we don't have enough budget to do that, but just wanted to show you kind of up close. These are some of the facilities that so far we're looking at. And so this is just a concept right now. This isn't backed up by any engineering data or anything like that. Trying to get an idea of where we go when we start to design. So
does the bus still get to do its thing and charge through all of the bike lane?
It does, yeah, so it does not. So here you can see my cursor. So right here would be the bus. And right there are actually, concrete islands down in that corner to prevent cars, give pedestrians a little more refuge, things like that. And so when we came up with these, we had a workshop and we included RTD to talk about bus operations and things like that. And so I don't exactly remember what the outcome was, but reorganizing stops, putting things in the signals so that the signal equipment can see a bus coming from a distance away and prioritize it so they can get through the intersection before the signal changes, things like that. So even though you can't see those, there's things that you can do to help buses get through the intersection that RTD is okay with without having them kind of unexpectedly come through a lane. So
that's always been a dangerous intersection.
It's not great.
One of the first things that we commented on when we moved here was that particular right-hand turn lane. So
in Porkchop?
One thing that I noticed, you don't have, and I know it's just design, you don't have bike lane continuing south on the east side of Broadway there. Would it make sense to put green painted crosswalk connecting to the west side of Broadway?
Yeah, so and part of that reason is because we were trying to, understand that we're not rebuilding the whole corridor. Right? We're like, well, what should we include and what should we not? And so that was just kind of part of the conversation that we had. These lines are, I'm not sure that these are the actual lines, but the pink lines are supposed to be right-of-way lines. I'm almost sure the right-of-way does not go halfway through the right turn lane. But yeah, the right-of-way there is kind of tight. And so that's one of the things where, do we build it right now? And that's what we'll get into in subsequent slides. But yeah, that's a good observation. So here's Broadway and Mineral. Few items here. So west of this intersection, there are bike lanes. They may not look like bike lanes, but there actually are bike lanes on Mineral west of here. And east on this side of the intersection, there's a shared use path on the south side of the intersection. And so thinking, you'll see the green skips all the way through the intersection is how do we better facilitate bike movements through this intersection so that people coming from the bike lanes can access the shared use path, vice versa. In addressing some of the safety concerns, we are extending the left turn capacity here on both the east and the west leg to accommodate the left turn capacity so people aren't getting into rear end accidents or making risky moves to get around them. We also, access close to the intersection is always something we're concerned about, as I mentioned, at Chipotle. And so right now, kind of our concept in order to accommodate this left turn capacity on the east leg is the possibility of closing off this access here. That's never a popular thing with businesses, right? But just something that we have to consider. The hard part about this one, and if I showed the whole picture, it's so small that you can't see it. But in order to kind of get this alignment right now, it looks like we have to chase this cross section like all the way down almost to county line to dig. Yeah, it's pretty long. So, and that obviously adds expense, but these are kind of where the concepts are at right now. So
It looks like you're adding access to that business on Broadway at the very top of that.
right, yeah, and that's one of the things. And these are just kind of concepts, right? So we had a conversation with that landowner a while ago, and they were wondering like, hey, are you going to close off any of the access? So we've had just some high level talks about, you know, what their operations are, what their desires are. So, but yeah, that's a good question or a good thing to point out. So if we did close that off and we added in a right turn access there, then you can still access it from almost, you know, any direction, right? It's just slightly different.
And you've got a drop lane there anyway, right?
Sorry.
As you go northbound on Broadway, is that right turn lane?
Yes, yeah. Mhm.
So you could just keep it going. Where's your right turn lane going? I think?
Yeah, I mean, you could, yeah. So.
Shane, do you know if the underpass that they're putting just north of this will have a way for bikes to come off of Broadway directly down to that area?
So I think not right at where the underpass is going to be. I think you have to come up at Jameson or further north, right? So there will be access, but it won't be right there on Broadway.
I see, yeah.
Is that a giant sidewalk on the west side of Broadway there, north of Mineral?
Right here.
Concept.
See this area here, Josh?
Yes, yeah, or to the left of that, looks like you have.
Oh, yes, yeah, what's proposed.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so this is where it's hard, and as we'll talk about costs here in a second, but if you've been to this area in Mineral, you know that this is, like on an aerial, it's nice because everything's flat and it's very affordable. There's actually a very steep slope up there, and so you're talking about one, buying right of way, then you're talking about a massive retaining wall, right? And this gets expensive very quick, so. Just to, you know, add sidewalk, we haven't addressed any of the other issues. And sidewalk is important, right? But, you know, we can't spend all our money just on one fix. So we kind of talked about this, but just to map it out so it's clear, the concept evolution or, you know, we got where we're at now. So initially we identified those safety issues as part of that safety study, the map with all the different leader lines and dots and everything like that. From there, the Broadway corridor study set a vision for how we accommodate bikes and pedestrians and access to transit on the corridor. And then now with this project, we're taking those ideas and actually getting down to, okay, what can we construct both from a geographic, a physical standpoint, like what's possible with the landscape that's out there and all the grades, but also what is possible with the existing resources that we have. And so that's where this gets really hard. So the grant money that we applied for this back in very early 2020. The word COVID, I don't think many people knew at that point when we submitted the grant application. And we anticipated a little over $1 million for each intersection. And to be safe, we threw in an extra $1 million just in case there were unanticipated costs. So we went out to bid, got several people who put in great proposals. But pretty consistently, the design feasibility of these intersections came back at around $1 million. Typically, design costs are, 15 to 20% of the overall project costs. You can see that, this is taking up more than 30% of the available funding. So, and we knew this. So once we got the grant funding and got our proposals back, we reached out to CDOT because we knew we're like, hey, this project is underfunded. It was one of the projects that we applied for funding pre-COVID, and now we're going to construction after COVID. What do we do? Our desire is not to give the money back. It's always hard to get more money when you give it back. And we want to make the safety upgrades too, which is the more important thing. And CDOT agreed. They're like, yeah, we don't want the money back either. The whole point of this is to make safety upgrades. So they said, come back to us when you're at 30% design and have a better idea of construction costs, and we can go from there. Well, things have changed since that conversation. There was plenty of funding going around, and we're like, oh, everybody is getting transportation funding. It's a pretty good chance that we get to fund everything. Things have changed pretty dramatically since that conversation. And so once we got to concept and asked our consultant team to come up with a ballpark estimate, it was much, much higher than $3.3 million. Like, we need to reach out to CDOT now so that we can shift strategies. So initially we got with our kind of the Cadillac packages, the consultant told us you're looking around the $20 million range, roughly $10 million per intersection. Like, well, obviously that's, way too much. So we had them scale it back a little bit and got down to just under $14 million and decided, okay, well, we could keep kind of chasing this forever, but let's do what our options are and talk to CDOT. So we had a conversation with CDOT earlier this week, and they said, hey, you can always reapply for additional funding and tell us why you need additional funding. But last year, the pot was only $10 million. So you're not likely to get, we're not going to give you all the money. They didn't say that. They can't guarantee that, but they're very unlikely that you're going to get all $10 million to construct your 2 intersections. So they said, projects are coming in $500,000 to $1 million award through this program. So it's possible that you could get that. There's a BC, a benefit over cost ratio, that we would have to calculate, things like that. So currently we've gone back to the consultant and said, okay, we've got to change strategies. And so what we're doing is looking at all these fixins and saying, okay, we got to prioritize these. We got to figure out what's going to give us the biggest bang for our buck. One, from a safety standpoint, looking at crash data, right? Where are the biggest crashes? And then also from a benefit over cost ratio, if we want to be competitive to reapply, then we need to prioritize, use that in our prioritization. So I wish I had more complete answers, but that's where we're at.
Was there any possibility of having the Costco development contribute to this? Because Costco will absolutely impact this intersection with the traffic levels.
Yeah, that's a good point. And so that's a number that's not encapsulated here, but and I don't know exactly where that's at, but it's somewhere between $1 and $1.5 million that will go to the Broadway intersection, and then a portion of that will go to the Broadway and Mineral, and then a portion will go to Broadway and County Line. So yes, that is not something that's captured here, but still not a whole lot. So and the fixes there are southbound right, and
it's the southbound right, eastbound right, and northbound left.
Yeah.
And then down at County Line, it's the
eastbound right. Yep.
Yeah. I just have a question on this budgeting stuff.
Yeah.
I know that we've had, there's definitely been inflation.
Yeah.
Definitely been construction inflation. I don't think it's 4 or 5x since 2020. So like, what happened? Were we thinking this wasn't as big of a deal as it was? Did the consultants really like open our eyes to there's a lot more we can do? Like what?
Yeah, so part of it is the bike and ped facilities that when we applied for this grant funding, we didn't have an idea of exactly what Broadway would be, right? So we were just thinking about how do we kind of spot treat traffic improvements, right, to deal with the traffic safety issues. And so that's where a lot of it has come is, how do we, if we want to build these intersections in a way that they will be very close to the final vision of Broadway, how do we get them there? It takes more money. But the reality is that with the available funding, and we're strategizing on some ways where, we can kind of pull some more funding from different grant opportunities, but we may have to, for the time being, set the stage for future improvements and make kind of the most critical safety upgrades now, which is not ideal. We hope that we could kind of do everything, but that's the reality of things sometimes.
I think another part of it, Jeff, was that we were looking at this more in isolation at the intersections. We were focused on, what can you do on immediately at the intersection. And when you start actually trying to implement some of that and then chase it to where you need to make all the changes, you end up with a block in each direction. And now your costs just escalate so quickly. Because now if you're talking about changing curb and gutter, it's not just 50 feet at the intersection, it's for 400 feet leading up to the intersection too. So you can get traffic shifted over, so you can create more room for pets and bikes on the side. Things that just weren't considered as part of the initial. And that's part of the problem going after grants. If you haven't done anything for them first and you just have good ideas, it's really hard to know what should you ask for, right? Until you've done some design. So really moving forward, we're trying as a city to identify what are projects we're going to want to go after grants for let's start doing some upfront stuff first, so we get more accurate estimates on potential construction costs. And something we didn't ever do in the past too was apply any kind of inflation costs. So like, let's say we're applying in 2020, we didn't think, okay, we might not build this till 2026. How much more cost gonna go up in that time frame? And it's something we factor into new grants.
I'll give that one to you. 2020 was a 2% inflation, like it's not,
Right.
it's not a meaningful
All of a
number.
sudden it jumped to 30%.
I'm a huge fan of the Broadway corridor study, but how much of that do you have to do in the city? When you're doing a project like this?
Like how much of it are we tied to?
Yeah, like, is there a commitment from every city along Broadway to actually design and build to the study guideline, or is that just more of a guideline that you can follow if you choose to?
Yeah, so it's more of a guideline and, all the cities were on board and so they all kind of agree with the vision, but it's one of those things where we want to get as close as we can. And we'll kind of get into this in a few slides. And if we don't have the money to do everything that's recommended for the Broadway corridor study, if we're deviating from it, we need to have a good reason, right? Because new data says this is not the right way to go. But if it's just because we don't have the funding, then we want the best we can to set the stage so that we're not precluding it in the future, but ideally we're setting the stage so that it's easier to do in the future. And so that's one of the things that we've talked about. We talked about with CDOT is, well, what's our strategy forward? The nice thing is that at this point we had kind of learned when you establish a scope of work with CDOT is to be as general as possible because things change, especially when you haven't done any design. And so we talked about, the ability to do the entire design for everything and then construct what is left. The hard part with that is that some fixes are tied to others, right? So not everything is in a vacuum. So if you make one fix and it's in the final location, there may be, a 2 or 3 foot difference from the curb line, just up the street, right? And so we have to consider that. But the nice thing with this pot of funding, which is different from like TIP funding, is that we don't have like a 2-year deadline, to hit a certain level of design and then another year after that to go to add, is that we just have a 10-year overall deadline. And so we need to finish design all at the same time, but we can stagger construction. And so that's where it gives us an opportunity maybe to apply, design both, apply funding, the remainder of the funding to one intersection along with whatever fee in lieu we might get, and then apply for future funding for the other intersection or for additional upgrades. And so that's what we're working through now is how we strategize that. So super easy and not stressful.
Sure, not at all.
Very clear.
Yeah,
No question.
And so there is a typo on this slide. We're not going to do preliminary design and final design in the spring. That's supposed to say fall of 2026. And the schedule is high level on purpose in that now that we've had this conversation with CDOT, we're going to set a path forward. We've already had that conversation with the consultant for them to start giving us some ideas. But based on other projects, if we move forward, in kind of a standard amount of time, then we can expect to get through preliminary design in the spring or summer. And then depending on how that goes or how our reviews go, we could be at final design and at clearance at the end of 2026, which is what that second 2026 is supposed to say. So, and then construction in 2027 is what we're hoping for. So
That would probably be this one intersection.
no, so, well, that's a good question. I mean, we could do both because we would have both design, but it's a question of, is it better to split up the remaining funding across both intersections? Or is it, because we have the longer timeline, do we just construct one and then pursue grant funding for the other to construct, whenever that's available? So it's TBD.
And which way are you leaning?
Yeah, I don't know yet.
It's only 36 hours in it.
Yeah, it depends on the minute, so.
Well, and part of the factors are Costco is going in soon.
Yeah.
So, we might need to prioritize that, but at the same time, we look at Littleton Boulevard and with the high school there and Epic continuing to grow and develop, a lot of kids there. So that's important too. So it's the same problem we have everywhere around the city. We want to do stuff everywhere, fix all the problems at once, but yeah, just don't have the funding to do it all. So I think that what we'll end up doing is minimal at one of them to get some safety in and then focusing on the other one initially until we can get more funding. That's what I think will come out of it, but we'll wait and see. Because I have a feeling that CDOT's gonna want us touching both intersections, not waiting. Since that was part of what was factored into the calculations of the benefit to cost ratio. Is that, we're gonna do something at both, so.
So public engagement, so we had, we've talked about this as a group, I think we've touched on this project, we're already 8:30, I'm gonna speed this up, Jeff, sorry. Yeah, so we put out an article in the Littleton Report print edition last week, got our first email about it, people want to know what's going on. We've already reached out to some of the business owners and to the business owners at each intersection, let them know, hey, we've got this project going on. Please sign up for updates, but we're going to reach out to you as soon as we have some ideas. The idea is that we'll focus, just like we're doing with a lottie, right? Where we're focusing on our targeted outreach of people who live on a lottie and live very near the corridor. But there's obviously an opportunity for anybody in the city to provide input. It's going to be the same application here where we're focusing our outreach on people right around the intersections, but everybody will have the opportunity to provide input. Partners and stakeholders, CDOT, they're the ones who are directing and administering the funds. There's several city departments that we're working with anytime we do a design project. Michael Baker is our lead consultant on this, RTD because they have transit operations on the corridor, and then LPS because they have a school very close to the Littleton intersection and not too far away from the Mineral intersection. So just making sure that we're working with them. So, and they're always good partners. So this was some ideas for policy level discussion. I know we're at time, but just things to think about for projects like this. Multimodal accommodations at intersections. I think everyone on the board is in favor of those, but what do those look like? And kind of referring to the third bullet there is, if we can't construct them right away, how do we set the stage for the future and not preclude them? Addressing known traffic safety issues and how we prioritize what are the most important traffic safety issues. And then prioritizing future improvements. So if we can design it now, but we can't build it now, how do we make sure that we don't lose sight of that as we, organize CIP budgets or pursue grant funding? And the next step, CDOT coordination, that happened a little bit this week. Concept refinement is the one we're starting to scratch now. But then obviously from there, what we're planning on doing is once we have firm direction where we're all in agreement on, is to really put our foot in the ground and move forward quickly with design, thinking one about the additional traffic that will be coming because of Costco, but also because of the issue of, Littleton High School and the Epic campus, which are growing. And so there's two very different concerns there. That.
No more questions.
No more questions.
Any questions?
The graphics are top notch, like this one here.
Shane drew that by hand.
Yeah.
Sorry for the guy that doesn't have anything.
He's the most. I think I generally speak for the board, but getting back to having to phase things out. Budget is obviously a huge issue here. I would just leverage on top of your comments. We need to keep focus on safety aspects.
Yeah.
Control aspects and not lose sight of that. I think that's a very important aspect, very important to this. I'm not sure how to make it all work. Trying to get everything through,
But the email that I got on this project was saying hey, we really need to focus on congestion here, not safety. They're usually one and the same at intersections, right? Because when there's a piece of the intersection that is not operating well, it usually leads to unsafe conditions or makes people feel like they have to make unsafe choices to get out of the frustrating condition that they're in. So
I'm sorry, who sent you an email saying folks?
I don't want to name names, but that's a
citizen, or was it someone?
It was a citizen who read about it and they said, hey, safety is great, but Broadway is always congested.
Names them.
Addresses.
These Seltzers. Awesome. Okay, guys. So it was just a citizen who'd written. Okay.
Yeah.
I thought it was someone at CDOT was telling you that. I was like,
Now that you've got the.
I wish I could tell people how this finishes up and everything's done. the amount of work that went into, the amount of thought that you guys had to go through for all of those variances and the trade-offs. The fact that it will have been 10 years in the process.
Yeah. Hopefully not, but
You started your story with 2018, so Shane, I'm gonna say.
I think, we are gonna have a conversation with the communications team next month, right? Next meeting.
So yeah, I can pull up the.
I 100% agree with you. I think that's a crucial part of what we be helping with and really pushing for is we need to get, the average citizen has no idea how much thought goes into these things and they think things are super easy. And he said 14 million and I heard gasps coming from the gallery, right? Stuff is expensive and there's a lot of work and I think we need to, the more people, what I find is when I talk to, you guys, I talk to my neighbors, talk to my friend and I explain some of this stuff, they go from going, oh, well, you know, everybody's just screwing everything up to going, oh, like, yeah, I didn't realize how complex it is. There's a lot of thought going in. It's more than we thought.
It's a lot more than remodeling a bit.
All right.
All right, so quickly, yes, the field trip, these are, I don't think everybody had a chance to look at this, but this is the proposed stop locations for the field trips. We've added a few that I don't think we've done in the past because some of these projects are coming to construction. So Bellevue, we can go look at the newly installed retrofitted protected bike lane. Santa Fe and Mineral, we've obviously been there, but there's some work going on there. Right now it's all developer work, right? We don't have a cutoff date, okay.
We think, just so you know, we're shooting right now for starting construction at Santa Fe and Mineral in November. There's other stuff going on now in advance. There's a lot of utility work going on out there. There's development work. So there's stuff going on in advance to get ready for our project, but actual construction should start November, December timeframe right now. We're literally just waiting for CDOT to give us concurrence to award the contract to the contractor that we selected.
Yeah, and we'll probably drive through the I guess Platte Canyon or Lowell, depending on which stretch you're on. Those intersections are being reconstructed, which was faster money. Is that right?
Combination of faster and H7.
And H7, okay. So, well, I guess I don't need to read these. Any questions or anything we need to add?
I have a comment, which is I know we pared it back a little bit. I still think we're gonna need to pare it back more.
Okay.
Just look at some of these timelines, which by the way, how are we gonna go from Euclid on number 7 at 11:35 to Lottie at 11:45 and then go back in time to number 9 at 11:40? Like, I think it's a little aggressive.
We're gonna be driving in the DeLorean.
That's right.
Possibly 88 miles an hour. So
Just say, good thing the traffic calming measures aren't in place yet.
There's something to study for your exam.
That's right. So that's fine. We can look at paring this back too. We actually already pared this back. So we had a dry run with Arapahoe County a few weeks ago. We had more stops on here and it was supposed to take 2 hours and it took closer to 3. So we will take that into
I think we just need to probably cut a few more out.
Okay.
it's kind of like our Lottie Street corridor walk, right? It's supposed to take 2 hours, took us 4 hours.
That's right.
Yeah, it could have gone longer. Like,
We're talkative. We ask lots of questions. I think we just need to be prepared for that.
Okay, sounds good. Yeah, we'll pare some of these back and go from there.
Maybe there's some, like last time, where we can talk about others while we're driving.
Yeah, exactly.
yeah, and like, do we stop and get out of the bus at a lot of these intersections, or is it kind of like stop and you point at a few things and then we take
Well, we
off?
usually kick someone out of the bus. We did a combination last time. I don't know what you thought about this time, Shane, but.
Yeah, we'll probably do a combination. So like the ones in bold are supposed to be the ones that we stop at. But like Santa Fe and Mineral, that's one that, I think everyone has maybe been there, but we could kind of talk about it as we drive through. Mineral Corridor we won't stop at. I think the Phillips protected bike lanes are probably worth stopping at. Euclid is as well. Littleton Boulevard sub-area plan, we can probably just drive that one and talk about it. So yeah, we'll take a look at it and pare it down a little bit.
Given your email earlier this afternoon about the meet and greet or whatever you want to call it at the practice park, is that one that we maybe could?
Yeah, that's a good question. Yeah, if we don't want to stop at the practice park and you guys want to go see that one on your own at East Community Center, that's one we could we could skip, so.
That's the day before, isn't it? The,
I think so, yeah, I think there was a question on if it was Thursday or Friday, but we'll clarify.
That was my question.
So, yeah. All right, and then do we want to do the look ahead here?
Yeah, real quick.
All right, so October 4th for the field trip. I think you guys all have an invite for that. I'll confirm here. It's only 2 weeks away, or a little less than that. So October 23rd, I believe these are all confirmed. Kenna typically does the confirming stuff because she's more responsible and organized than I am, but I will confirm with her. So communications, ULI TAP presentation, omnibus and shopping cart. I'm pretty sure Kathleen will present on both of those, bullets 2 and 3, and I'm pretty sure she is confirmed. And then November will be LPS superintendent talk, Todd Lambert, and then budget and finance. So we'll have both from finance come, as well as one of the Brents come and talk about how the financial situation ties into all the projects we're doing. So rather than just a kind of financial course. So
It's good. I want to point out to everyone, if you go back to October, so training session, was it this week? It was this week, right? That they presented the ULI TAP?
I'm not sure. It may, I could
I
look
believe
at
it was, Tuesday. Pam, you were there, right? In touch about it? So I would ask everybody to go and watch that YouTube before. So we try to keep that part of, instead of having her repeat herself verbatim.
They did nothing about parking, driving, transit. I mean, it is not feasible, in my opinion.
That would be something we're allowed to ask. So just as a reminder, like, I'm asking people to repeat themselves.
Sorry, Jeff, can you repeat that to look at what?
So at the studies, the city council study session from Tuesday.
Okay.
Kathleen did this presentation on the ULI TAP and actually had some of the council members, not council members, what was the name of the committee members? I don't know whatever. The people who actually did the study were there at the.
Okay.
So if you can watch that beforehand.
Would you be able to share?
yes.
And you can watch it at 1.5 times speed, so you don't have to be the full time.
All right, I gotta remember that trick. Okay.
Don't try and do that with Shane, though. He already talks fast. If you go 1.5, you won't be able
It doesn't go fast, and then I watch the video after. I'm like, man, slow down, dude.
Slow him down to 0.75.
What did he say?
All right. Anyone have any comments, questions? Does that look good for the next couple of months?
Yeah, and I don't have any comments. You saw the invite to the practice park thing. Do you have any? Okay. Ken is out of town. We made it through, so we're
Still alive.
Yeah, we're still alive. Saying something.
All right. Well, thank you, everyone. And does anyone have anything else to add? Meeting adjourned.
All right, thank you guys.
Thank you.